Okay, so here we are on part 9, our final piece of flying solo. When we left last time at the assembly, they'd asked for Mr. Fabiano to come up. And finally, they asked, well, where's his sub? And Karen said, see, we didn't have a sub today. We didn't have anybody. At that moment, the photographer swiveled around. Her flash went off and all craziness broke loose. So now we are on Sunday, April 30th. 9:04 p.m. Karen Ballard's home. Karen lay in bed with her eyes closed. She was tired of talking and arguing. Her parents were furious on Friday, angry with her on Saturday, and they were still pretty mad on Sunday. She couldn't remember the last time they had been so mad for so long. All weekend, Karen had listened to them. We are disappointed in you. Your mother and I expect you to show better judgment than that. When it was Karen's turn to speak, she had repeated 11 words over and over and over until they began to lose their meaning. We ran the class. We did our work. We behaved ourselves. Character, her mother reminded her, is how you act when no one is watching. I know, Karen had said stubbornly. I'm proud of how we acted. This was true, mostly. Except for one small thing, her conscience was clear. On Friday, when Mrs. Zimetti came into the room to get Sean O'Day, Karen had said that the sub had gone to the bathroom. That was a lie, a small lie, but it was still wrong, and she intended to apologize to Mrs. Zimetti. The downstairs phone started ringing. It hadn't stopped ringing all weekend. She hoped that it wasn't for her, but in a moment she heard footsteps on the stairs. The door opened and the silhouette of her mother appeared in the doorway. Karen, are you awake? Her mother asked. Karen could hear the coldness in her mother's voice. Would her parents stay mad at her forever? Yeah, Mr. Fabiano is on the phone. He wants to talk to you. Karen climbed out of bed and stumbled into the hallway. This was the call she had been dreading. Hello? Karen thought her voice sounded faint, uncertain. Hi, Karen. This is Mr. Fabiano. Pause. I'm really sorry to be calling you so late at night, but I just got home. That's okay, she said softly. Another pause. I guess you heard, huh? I just got off the phone with Mr. Peacock, he said. He's pretty upset. I know, Karen said. I'm just trying to figure out what happened on Friday, Mr. Fabiano said. We ran the class ourselves, she said, flattered that he had called her. Yes, Mr. Peacock told me that, Mr. Fabiano said. But what did you do all day? We did our work mostly, she said. You did? Yes, sir. Some kids fooled around a little, but we got a lot of work done too. I ran the class, sort of. I followed the plans you left for the sub. Let's see, we did spelling, math, deer. We did just about everything. Did you write? He asked. Yes, sir. We wrote a ton. As a matter of fact, we wrote like 4 times, I think. All right, he said. He sounded relieved. Karen, did anything out of the ordinary happen? Anything I should know about? Well, yes. Karen took a deep breath. Bastian told us it was his last day, so we took a vote and decided to have a rock ritual. When was that? Mr. Fabiano asked. Around 2 o'clock, she said, before the assembly. We passed around the rock, but when it was Rachel's turn, she started writing Bastian these notes about Tommy Feathers. He started yelling at her. They got into this really big argument. About Tommy? Yes, sir, Karen said. She swallowed. It ended up okay, but it got a little scary for a while. They were both crying. Did Rachel talk? He asked. No, Karen said, but she cried a lot. Bastian did too. I see. Another pause. Mr. Fabiano, in a way I feel like I should apologize, but in another way I don't. It's kind of hard to explain. Karen, we'll talk about this tomorrow. Mr. Fob, are you mad at me? Should I be? He asked. No, I don't think so, Karen replied. I really don't. I'll see you tomorrow morning, he told her. Get some sleep. Monday, May 1st. 8:15, room 238. Mr. Fabiano stood staring at his students. Rachel had never seen his face so somber. He hadn't spoken once since she and her classmates filed into the room and quietly took their seats. Now they sat at their desks, looking at him, and he stared back. Rachel glanced around the classroom. She noticed that Sean was wearing what looked like a clean t-shirt. He looked over and flashed her a big smile. Good morning, Mr. Peacock said over the loudspeaker. The class sat in silence while the principal made the announcements. Mr. Peacock made no mention of the parents, reporters, and TV cameras stationed in front of the school. Everyone stood for the Pledge of Allegiance. Rachel heard for Mr. Fabiano's voice, with liberty and justice for all. Attendance, Mr. Fabiano said. Karen, here. Rhonda, here. Christopher, present, he smirked. Is something funny, Christopher? Mr. Fabiano asked, looking up from his sheet. Something we should all know about? No, sir, Christopher replied quietly. Pause. Mr. Fabiano glanced down at the attendance sheet. Bastian? Oh, yes, he moved. He wrote something on the sheet. Tim? Here. Robert, Corey? We're here. Melinda? Here. Jessica? Here. Rachel? He glanced up and marked her as president. I'm here, she said quietly. Everyone turned. Rachel blushed and lowered her eyes. She felt a little silly. Mr. Fabiano stood up. You spoke. Yes, she said. She glanced over at Missy, who looked as if she'd seen a ghost. The expression of shock softened into a grin. Hi, Rachel, Missy whispered. Hi, Rachel said. It's so good to hear your voice, Mr. Fabiano said, smiling. She looked up for a few seconds before realizing he was waiting for her to say something more. I know, she said at last. A time to keep silence and a time to speak, Mr. Fabiano said. To every little thing, there is a season, he nodded. I know, she said again, and kids laughed as if now those were the only 2 words she could say. Seems we have lots to talk about, Mr. Fabiano said to the class. He spoke in a calm voice. I wasn't here on Friday, but it has come to my attention that Friday was not your typical day. Something happened right here in this classroom, something unusual, something serious, and I would like to know about it. He got up and walked slowly toward the back of the room. At Tommy Feather's empty desk, he stopped and sat down. Kids swiveled around to look at him. I want you to write me a letter, he said. What I want to know is this. What happened? Nobody has a monopoly on the truth. Each of you will have your version. He pointed to a sign on one of the walls. Character's how you act when nobody's watching. You've read this sign 100 times, right? All right then. How did you act when no teacher was watching? Right. Don't just give me a bunch of fluff. Dig under the surface. Tell me something I don't know. Don't rush. See how much you can get down in 20 minutes, then we'll get together and share. From Jasmine. Dear Mr. Fabiano, at first it was sort of a prank. No more teacher, no more books, yuck, yuck, yuck. But after a while, we started feeling kind of proud of what we were doing. Sort of like, we don't need any grown-ups, we can do it ourselves. What I can't get my parents to understand is how totally normal the day was. We worked, talked, voted on decisions. True, some kids were talking out more and making wisecracks, but most of the time we felt pretty close. And there were a couple of times I felt like we, the class, were a team, a real family. Your student, Jasmine. From Jessica. Dear Mr. Fobb, I do not, repeat, do not want to write about Friday. I'm sorry, but I'm sick of talking about it. This is the last time I'll let anyone talk me into a stunt like that. Boy, did I get in trouble with my parents, especially my father. Here's a sample of my weekend. Dad. Didn't you know it was wrong, Jessica? Me. Yes. Dad. Didn't you know it was dangerous for a bunch of kids to be unsupervised all day? Me. Yes, sort of. Dad. Sort of? Me. Well, yes. Dad. Then why did you do it? Mom. Stop it. You're putting her on trial. Dad. I'm just trying to get at the truth. Mom. You're cross-examining her. I never want to go through a weekend like that and to think that I was the only kid who voted against the idea of running the class in the first place. Super annoyed, Jessica. From Christopher. Dear Mr. Fobb, Saturday morning the phone rang. It was a reporter from the National Enquirer. I think he was calling my mother because she's president of the PTA. But he seemed happy to talk to me. We heard that some strange things happened in your class on Friday. Satanic rituals, that sort of thing. Is that true? I told him. We got out the Ouija board and used it to try to contact the spirit of Tommy Feathers, a kid in our class who died in October. The man asked, really? I told him, no, I'm kidding. We did our work, read, wrote. It was just like another day. He seemed disappointed and hung up. Here's the saddest fact of all. Nothing happened. Don't worry about whether or not we were good. Believe me, we were too good. No rock music, no party, no nothing. For about 20 minutes, some of us played a computer game. Big deal. Pathetically, Christopher. From Missy. Dear Mr. Fabiano, Friday was an important day. We proved that kids could have fun and still act a lot more responsibly than most grown-ups, like my parents, even thought we could. Did we do the right thing? Tough question. In the Revolutionary War, the colonists dumped tea into the Boston Harbor. Was that wrong? My mother thinks that's not a fair comparison, but I disagree. We saw the chance for more freedom. We took that chance, and we were willing to pay the price. Sincerely, Missy. P.S. Did you see the photograph of our class in the newspaper? That's the best picture of me I've ever had taken. From Karen. Dear Mr. Fobb, you've been telling me all year that I'm a leader, but I don't think I realized it until Friday. It was me who went to the office and decided not to tell Mrs. Pierce that they forgot to send us a sub. It was me who gave the class the idea in the first place. I talked the other kids into it. I take full responsibility for what happened. I went to the office to tell them that we had no teacher, but when I got there, I realized that all they would do is send us some stranger to tell us what we were supposed to do. Who needed that? We knew what to do. I figured, hey, we can run the class ourselves. Jessica thought it was really dangerous for us to be without a teacher. My parents say the same thing. I thought and thought about it all weekend, and I still respectfully disagree. We handled every problem that came up until the rock ritual when Rachel and Bastion got into that awful argument. I'll admit it, that was very, very scary. That was the only time I wished you were with us. Then again, if you were with us, I seriously doubt we ever would have had talked and written about Tommy Feathers. Sincerely, Karen Ballard. From Bastion. Today is Friday. You won't read this till Monday. Today has been Bastion's terrible, horrible, no good day. We just did a rock ritual. This is my last day in class. Rachel accused me of picking on Tommy Feathers. She's right, but it was nothing against him. That's my style. I picked on lots of kids when I moved here, and I'll probably do the same thing in Hawaii. It's like what they say in the Air Force, the best defense is a good defense. Today, I cried in school. I haven't done that since first grade. Kids probably think I got upset because of what Rachel said. Wrong. It was because of Barkley, my puppy. I want to take him to Hawaii. It's too cruel to quarantine him for so long. So after school, I'm going to give him to Sean O'Day. It's the best thing for Barkley, even though it's a bad thing for me. Your former student, Bastian Favel. P.S. I'm going to ask Dad if I can get a new puppy when we get to Hawaii. P.P.S. It's okay if you let Rachel White read this letter. From Sean. Dear Mr. Fabiano, when Mr. Peacock found out we had been alone all day, he jammed us into his office and bowled us out for about 15 minutes. He said we might get suspended. But I didn't mind. I was in a double good mood. First, because I knew I was going to be walking home with Rachel. And second, because Bastian told me he was giving me his puppy. Me and Rachel walked home without saying anything. Her mom got us homemade cookies and milk and put them on a little coffee table in front of the TV, but I was too excited to eat. I ran almost the whole way over to Bastian's. I was half thinking that Bastian was kidding me, but he wasn't. He cried when he gave me Barkley, and I felt sorry for him. When Barkley came into the house, he ran over to the couch and jumped on Dad and started licking his face like a lollipop. The puppy likes Dad and Darlene, but he's crazy about me. He follows me all over the place. Dad made a little bed for him in the corner of my bedroom, but today when I woke up, Barkley was sleeping curled up on my bed, and I got a feeling like Christmas morning. Yours truly, Sean. And from Rachel. Dear Mr. Fabiano, last night, Mom ordered 2 small pizzas, one with black olives, one with pepperoni. Which one do you want? She asked. And it hit me. It probably sounds stupid, but when she asked that pizza question, a little light went on in my head. I had a choice. Last fall, I decided to stop talking, but I didn't have to keep quiet for the rest of my life. I could choose to speak when I was ready. Today, it felt like the right time. I can't wait to tell Mom and call my father. I believe we accomplished something important on Friday. Class 6-238 won't get a place in the Guinness Book of World Records, but for almost 6 hours, we were on our own. Jessica thought it was dangerous, and she was 100% right. Of course it was dangerous. The first time Amelia Earhart soloed, she nearly crashed, but she survived, and so did we. Deep down, I believe we did the right thing. You're going to hear all about me and Bastian fighting during the rock ritual. I still don't completely understand what happened. All I know is it was the 6-month anniversary of Tommy's death. So all day I was thinking of him, and all of a sudden my feelings just bubbled over. I was unfair to Bastian, and I wrote him a note to apologize. Lots of times I wasn't very nice to Tommy either. I snubbed him the night before he died. I can't change that. But over the weekend, I said to myself, I can live with what I did. I'm not a terrible person. And now I can say it out loud. Love, Rachel. And that was Flying Solo by Ralph Fletcher.